Milk Crate Moments. Next time on The Culture Hack, we have Jeff Tetz. He's the CEO of Results. And we're going to talk about those moments in your business where you realize that you needed help. And how can results get you to where you want to go? Watch and find out next time on The Culture Hack. Hey, it's Adam here, and you're watching The Culture Hack, where we're talking about how to create engaged workspaces that unlock the potential of your teams and drive your business forward in ways you've never seen. So stay tuned. Jeff Tetz, welcome to The Culture Hack. Thanks so much for coming down.
I'm so happy to be here.
Jeff is, of course, the CEO of Results, which is maybe my favorite title I've ever heard.
I like it too.
If you missed last episode, we talked about Results and its framework for helping businesses grow and evolve and continue on their journey successfully. This episode, though, we're going to get into a little bit of case studies and maybe tell some stories of how you guys have helped businesses. So we finished off last episode. We talked a little bit about the kind of the dreaming part of your framework. Are there any stories coming to mind where that was, kind of a real eye-opener for your client and that kind of is what propelled them forward?
For sure. Well, I mean, we've been in business for 27 years. And so part of the challenge is trying to figure out what are the stories that are most compelling. But one of the things I wanted to say is, I think at the high level, what happens to business leaders is they start to feel their excitement and enthusiasm starts to wane as some of these unsolved problems persist. And so there's like almost a sense of frustration and malaise that can come across business owners of successful companies. And that can manifest itself in all kinds of ways. But an organization wouldn't look to work with a third party unless that frustration got to a certain point where it creates tension for change. So I think that's the common thread amongst all the groups that we work with. It's like, we're really successful, we're profitable, but it seems to feel different. It's not like it used to be. Those are some of the common phrases that come up when we sort of enter into initial conversations with organizations. But one of my I guess sort of favorite stories is a hospitality group that we worked with for many years, and they have several locations across Canada actually, and they tell a story as sort of being the founders of this restaurant chain, and they called it their milk crate moment, where they like quadrupled in locations, and at that point they had gone from like 3 locations to like 13 or 14 locations in about a 24-month span. And so that was a lot to bite off for that group, but they were largely running those 13 or 14 stores as if they still only had 2. And the milk crate moment was a husband and wife was sitting in one of their locations at literally at 3 a.m. They had some key staff that had departed, and they were exhausted to the point where they actually thought they might try to get out of the business. And over the next several weeks, I'd kind of known the group already, but we started to sit down and have conversations about what had changed, what was different, and not just the things, not just the frustrations, but what did they not like, what did they like about the business, what were the strengths, what were the things that sort of still compelled and excited them about the company. And we started to realize very soon that they were not intentional about their culture. They were hiring anybody that would just say yes to a job. And as we dug into it, the biggest problem they had was just a lack of quality of management at the store levels. And they were too big for the management of each location to run through the 2 of them anymore. And so through the process of helping them clarify what did they actually want from this business, why this aggressive growth, and were they actually as committed to this aggressive growth as they thought? And when the answer was yes, then it became about, okay, well, here's some of the things we have to start looking at if we're going to create consistency from location to location. And more importantly, how are we going to get you out of the day-to-day so that you can get important things done through location managers? And so we started the process of clarifying their core values, their purpose, their culture, and then drilling down into what are the systems that we have to put into the stores. And one of the very first things was, we got to create a hiring process that other people can execute so that you're not the only ones responsible for hiring people that fit at the locations. And so as we created a game plan, as we started to work on some of those systems and those processes, we were able to alleviate the fires that had to get fought by them. And so, 12 months later, you're at a point where they've actually got, instead of 2 or 3 of them, they've got really a strong team of 11 or 12 people that are almost as committed to the outcomes of the organization as they were. And so, and I think that reminds me that we might help companies with strategy and execution and discipline and habits, but I think what we're really selling is hope and clarity and a new belief system that even though you're struggling and you have challenges, you're capable of doing this. And I think that's sort of a story that reminds me of the emotions and the personalities behind the processes and the systems of a successful growing company.
I really like that. I think we are so good sometimes at being analytical and jumping to a spreadsheet to solve the problems, right? Well, we clearly need more metrics. We need a dashboard, right? But ultimately, like you said, the problem is not the process or the whatever. It's that emotional piece. Do people want to be here? Do they care to be here? Are they bought in? Are they willing to give you? You can't ask. You can only ask people for 100% because that's what you pay them, right? The rest they volunteer or not.
Yeah.
And I think, in my opinion, you should treat culture, especially a discipline the same as any other discipline in your company. Like you said, be intentional.
Yeah, and what you're talking about there, at least in part, is what I refer to as discretionary effort. And I think that's a really important point. Every single day in our organizations, employees, they have the choice whether to apply some discretionary effort or not, to give us just a little bit more than maybe what we expect. And I'm not a proponent of hustle culture and that work has to be your life, and the expectations of an owner and a senior leader are different than an employee. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. But no matter what work means to a person, everyone on the planet deserves to get at least a certain level of fulfillment from their work. Everyone deserves to work for a great boss, and it's almost impossible to have a great organization if almost every one of your employees isn't enthusiastic in their pursuit of their goals, and that's the discretionary effort. And so if employees just come to work at 9 and they leave at 5 or whatever the hours might be, if they're not thinking about their work when they're not at work in the right way, in a productive way, I think that's a problem.
I like that. I think, and that's where creativity lives.
Brilliant. Exactly. Right? That's exactly the word that came to mind for me as well. Yeah, you're so right. We're not normally creative, in the day to day when we are checking off our task list. It's on a drive, it's on a hike, it's on a walk. It's it's out for friends, or you see something and it's like, oh, I wonder if we could use that in our business. And I think those are the healthy signs of a great culture. If you feel like you're always going to be on call and answering emails on Saturday mornings, that's an unhealthy culture in a lot of cases, depending on what your role is. But you're right, that's where creativity is born. And without discretionary effort sort of being tapped into, your employees are not going to be very creative.
Somebody told me once that the best litmus test for a good culture is walk down the hall and then just listen. If you can feel laughter somewhere, then that's a good sign. But if there's just silence and closed doors, could be an indication of other things, right? Passive aggressiveness or lack of communication. We talked about that last episode, right?
Yeah.
It's so many little things, right? People are like, oh, well, we have our company Christmas party and we invest a lot of money in that, and that's how we give back, and da-da-da. But it's not the party, right?
For sure. And I think laughter, I think it's an interesting KPI. That could be a leading indicator of a healthy culture for sure. And as long as people are not laughing at you, right? Probably another indicator sort of in the opposite direction when you walk into the lunchroom and the room goes silent and you just know, whoa, I guess I was the topic of conversation. Probably not in a positive way either. There's something else you're reminding me of in terms of walking the hallways. This might be a little counterintuitive, but look for the amount of trash that's on the floor. And when I say that, there was some research done by a lean process expert. And he had worked with all the major auto dealerships around the world on helping them sort of codify their processes and get consistency of standards and expectations. And he was always puzzled where technically he would do the exact same thing with all of his clients. And these are working with like large, corporations and some of the biggest auto dealerships on the planet. And he got so curious, in fact, as to like, why would two auto dealerships that he did largely the exact same scope of work have such different outcomes with it? And when it came right down to it was a caring mindset. That's what he found the difference was. And one of the CEOs of the auto dealers of the auto manufacturers said that the biggest difference was people went from just seeing a piece of trash on the floor and walking by it. Like there was a rolled up piece of paper on that floor for a month, the CEO said. And one of the differences they made in conjunction with the lean training was really trying to get intentional about the culture and the engagement level. And he was like, once people started taking ownership for their part of the organization, not just within the confines of their role, all of their outcomes changed.
I love that. Like, don't walk by.
Yeah.
Right? We don't walk by. We don't accept mediocrity.
Yeah. See it and solve it, I often say, right?
Yeah.
And if we got the more and more people, and you mentioned in the last episode, thoroughbreds. Thoroughbreds see it and they own it. And so often we don't even know what they're seeing and owning. And that's a brilliant place to be when other people are taking responsibility for the business outcomes without you even knowing about it.
Right. Well, that kind of brings up this idea for me of, this idea of like quick wins and the effect it can have on a team or a group of people, right? Like if the coffee sucks, fix the coffee, right?
Yeah.
And then, fix the garbage. And then like it kind of has that snowballing effect. But next episode, I want to get into some more stories. I feel like we've got so many that we could talk about. But in the meantime, somebody wants to learn more about results or get a hold of you, where do they go?
Yeah, first place would be to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can just find me at Jeff Tetz. And then if you want to check out our website, you can find us at unleashresults.com.
Great. See you next time. Hey, thanks for watching The Culture Hack. Do you want to chat culture and engagement? Give us a call and come on the show.